Sir, our TIE interceptors have located a rebel fleet orbiting the planet Turkana.
Excellent. Prepare the attack. Move our Star Destroyers within range and launch all TIE Fighter squadrons.
At once, sir.
The Rebel Alliance had grown stronger after the recent liberation of the Mon Calamari and Quarren peoples from the stranglehold of the Galactic Empire. In gratitude for the Alliance's assistance in fighting for their worlds, both species agreed to use their galaxy-renowned Mon Calamari shipyards to manufacture badly needed capital ships for the Rebels. They also lent their current fleet of Mon Calamari cruisers to the Rebellion's growing numbers, to ensure they would never be enslaved by the Empire again. But that was not all. Scientists and engineers from the Incom Corporation, disgusted by the Empire's recent takeover of their company, staged a defection to the Rebel Alliance. Incom was a well-regarded manufacturer of spacecraft and airspeeders, particularly the Z-95 Headhunter and ARC-170. When the defection of the Incom staff took place, they had just completed development of a revolutionary new starfighter that they intended to keep out of the Empire's clutches. Before they left, though, the defectors took all information related to this new starfighter project with them, for the purpose of giving it to the rebels for use in their struggle against the Imperial Navy. When the former Incom staff did eventually reach the Rebel Alliance and presented their gift, High Command were quick to realize its extraordinary potential, and began producing it en masse. As events would soon happen after, it was to be a prudent decision. An undisclosed amount of time after both events, the newly strengthened Rebel Alliance fleet had begun rallying over Turkana, a planet in the outer rim of the galaxy where it was hoped that the prying eyes of the Galactic Empire would not be able to find them. And yet they did. Imperial intelligence had somehow found out about the Rebel fleet, with the Imperial Sector Governor ordering a task force of 10 Imperial Star Destroyers be dispatched to annihilate the Rebels in an overwhelming display of force. As the Star Destroyers entered the system, they indeed found the Rebels in orbit of Turkana. Wasting no time, Captain Lennox of the Star Destroyer Tyrant, and leader of the task force, ordered his ships to block the main hyperspace vector out system, and to begin bombarding the Rebel fleet with their turbo lasers and TIE bombers and starfighters. In the first minute of the battle, it seemed that the rebellion would be well and truly crushed, as both the superior numbers and overwhelming firepower of the Imperials would outright destroy the Rebel Alliance fleet. But the Rebels had an edge that the Empire did not know they had: the X-Wing starfighter. At this early stage in the war, the Rebel starfighters in the fleet mainly consisted of two craft. The first was the Y-Wing, an older, late Clone Wars era fighter bomber whose age was becoming more and more apparent with the ongoing Galactic Civil War. On the opposite end of the Y-Wing was the X-Wing Space Superiority starfighter. It had the ability to match or exceed the Imperial TIE Fighter, Bomber, and Interceptor in terms of flight performance alone. But that was not all. The X-Wing was equipped with quad laser cannons, hyperspace capability, deflector shields, which Imperial fighters sorely lacked, and the ability to load proton torpedoes for use in attacks against capital ships. As the Rebels began launching their fighters, Captain Firmus Piett, commander of the ISD Accuser and second-in-command of the task force, noticed the X-Wings and warned Lennox about their potentially superior abilities. However, his concerns were ignored and Lennox committed to the assault, believing that their far superior numbers would win them the day. Unfortunately for Lennox, this was not to be just another battle. The X-Wings tore through the TIE fighters like a knife through cheap cloth, leaving the TIE bombers open to the predations of the Y-Wings. The X-Wings were as good as the Incom designers had said it was. Its ability to match its Imperial space superiority equivalents in flight was as much an aid to the Rebel pilots as the deflector shields that allowed their craft to absorb the laser blasts from the TIEs. The superior numbers of the Empire was simply not enough to counter the abilities of the Rebel X-Wings working in tandem with the Y-Wings, and the battlefield quickly filled with the wreckage of the Empire's spacecraft. Captain Piett, watching the battle go awry, took matters into his own hands by ordering his Star Destroyer out of formation so that he could bring its turbo lasers to bear on the Y-Wings assaulting their TIE bombers. The bombers were critical to victory for the Empire here, They needed to reach the rebel cruisers and begin their torpedo attacks if there was to be any chance of victory. And for a brief time, it had worked. Many Y-wing pilots lost their lives in Piett's maneuver, which allowed for a TIE bomber squadron to slip past the rebel fighter screens and disable one of the Mon Calamari cruisers. But the winds of battle would change yet again, as the X-Wings had finished with the TIE fighters and began to join the surviving Y-Wings in attacking the TIE bombers, together swiftly adding the last of the Empire's finest to the increasing amount of space debris surrounding them. With the Imperial strike craft taken care of, the Alliance fighters began attacking the Star Destroyers directly, exploiting their main weakness: their inability to effectively fight Starfighters on their own. The X-Wings and even the Y-Wings could simply dodge the point defense fire of a Star Destroyer to deliver their proton torpedo payloads directly to them, which they did, resulting in severe damage to the Star Destroyer's Ajax and Formidable. Captain Lennox was now faced with a hard truth. There was no longer a way to destroy the rebel fleet without inflicting catastrophic damage to his task force. Only one option remained to him now: retreat. In the aftermath, the rebels realized that the X-Wings were the exact edge they needed in their war against the Galactic Empire. Had they not been at Turkana, the battle could have easily resulted in an Imperial victory, and the crippling of the rebellion as a whole. Captain Piett realized this too. In a post-mission report to his superiors, he recommended that more fast-moving interceptors be used to counter the X-Wings. But if rebel fighters got in range of their capital ships, tractor beams should be used to slow down their craft so that Imperial gunnery crews could more easily track and destroy their targets. And third, Captain Lennox had to be removed from command of naval operations in their sector. His final recommendation, however, would be the most serious for the Rebel Alliance at this point in the war. He proposed a plan for an in-depth campaign that he would lead personally against the rebellion, one that would utterly crush them by teaching the rebel scum firsthand as to the insurmountable might of the Galactic Empire. This proposal was none other than Operation Strike Fear.